I used to love the quiet hours of the night. When the world outside faded into a hush, and my home wrapped itself around me like a cocoon. There was something comforting about solitude, until solitude started listening back. It began with a sound. A small, almost imperceptible noise. Not the sharp creak of old wood settling. Not the distant hum of traffic beyond my window. No, this was something else. A shuffle. Like bare feet brushing against the floorboards of my hallway. At first, I dismissed it. Houses make sounds. Floorboards expand and contract. The wind does strange things. But as the nights wore on, the sound persisted. Always at the same hour, 3:12 a.m. A slow, deliberate shuffling, as if someone was pacing. I lived alone. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, the tricks of a restless mind. But then, one night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard it again, closer this time. Not from the hallway. From inside my bedroom. The air turned heavy, thick with something unseen. My breath slowed, my ears straining against the silence that followed. Then came the whisper. Soft. Garbled. Right by my ear. Do you see me? I froze. Every muscle in my body locked in place. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't even breathe. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the presence lifted. The air lightened. The whisper melted into the walls. The clock on my nightstand read 3:13 a.m. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. And the next night, when the clock struck 3:12 a.m., the shuffling began again. But this time, the voice laughed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The laughter wasn't loud. It wasn't the exaggerated, manic sound you hear in horror movies. No, it was quiet. Almost amused. A sound that didn't belong in my room, in my house, in my life. Yet, it was there. I gripped the blanket tight. My pulse hammering. I could see nothing in the darkness, but I felt it. A presence. The weight of unseen eyes pressing against me. Then, silence. The laughter stopped, but the feeling remained. It was as if something stood at the foot of my bed, waiting. Watching. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. I didn't dare look. I don't know when I fell asleep, but when I woke up, the room was still. The early morning light seeped through my blinds, pale and weak. I told myself I had imagined it. A sleep paralysis episode. A trick of the mind. But deep down, I knew better. Because when I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my feet landed on something cold. I looked down. A single wet footprint. Not mine. And leading away from my bed, toward the open bedroom door, were more. Bare footprints. Faint. Damp. Ending abruptly in the middle of the hallway. I didn't shower the night before. I hadn't stepped in anything. There was no logical explanation. I stood there, my skin prickling, staring at the last footprint in the hallway. It just stopped. As if whoever, whatever, had made them had vanished into thin air. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I wasn't alone. I never had been. That night, I locked my bedroom door. I shoved a chair under the handle. I told myself it was just for peace of mind. Just to prove to myself that nothing was really happening. But at 3:12 a.m., the shuffling returned. A slow drag of feet. A pause. A breath of silence so thick it squeezed my lungs. Then, a knock on my bedroom door. Soft. Deliberate. And then, a whisper from the other side. You locked me out. The voice wasn't mine. The laughter followed. And this time, it didn't stop. The laughter seeped through the cracks of the door like smoke, thin and curling. Slipping into the room though I had locked it out. I sat frozen in my bed, my breath shallow, my fingers digging into the sheets. The knock came again. Soft. Persistent. Let me in. I didn't move. I couldn't. The voice wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. There was something about its tone, something playful and patient, like it knew I couldn't resist listening. The handle rattled. The chair I had wedged under the doorknob scraped against the floor. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the noise stopped. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I stared at the door. My ears straining. I didn't dare breathe too loud, didn't dare shift in bed. The air was thick, charged like the moments before a thunderstorm. Then, scratch. Something dragged down the length of the door. A slow, deliberate scrape, like fingernails skimming over the wood. It started at the top and slid all the way down, stopping just above the floor. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers. The screen lit up, casting weak blue light across the room. 3:14 a.m. The scratching stopped. The floorboards outside my door creaked. A single step. Then another. It was leaving. But not because I wanted it to. It was because it had found another way in. I heard it before I felt it. The breath. Right against the back of my neck. Hot. Wrong. You should have opened the door. I screamed. And then. Darkness. I woke up choking on air, my throat raw, my body drenched in sweat. The room was still dark. But something was wrong, off in a way that sent every nerve in my body into high alert. I wasn't lying down anymore. I was sitting. In the chair by the window. My blankets were gone. My bed was empty. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding. How the hell had I gotten here? I didn't sleepwalk. I had never in my life woken up anywhere other than where I had fallen asleep. The clock on my nightstand blinked, 3:47 a.m. I turned toward my bed, my skin crawling. The sheets were pulled back neatly, as if someone had lifted me out of it with care. No. Not someone. Something. My chest tightened. I took a slow step toward the bed, every part of me screaming that something was watching. The silence was loud, pressing against my ears, waiting for me to move. To react. And then. The mattress shifted. Not a lot. Just enough for me to see it. The indent. The shape of someone lying there. Right where I had been sleeping. I stumbled back. My breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The blankets rose slightly, as if something unseen had exhaled beneath them. Then. The whisper. You feel it now, don't you? I bolted. I didn't think. I didn't grab my phone, my keys, anything. I just ran. Tore through the house, flung open the front door, and didn't stop until I was standing in the middle of my driveway. My breath clouding in the cold night air. The street was empty. Silent. A few porch lights glowed in the distance, the only signs of life in the sleeping neighborhood. I turned back toward my house. The bedroom window was open. I knew I hadn't opened it. I knew I had locked it. But there it was, curtains fluttering slightly in the breeze. And behind them. A shape. Standing in my room. Watching me. I didn't go back inside that night. I sat in my car until the sun came up, gripping the steering wheel, my body rigid with exhaustion and fear. When morning finally came. When the daylight felt safe enough, I forced myself back inside. The window was closed. My bed was untouched. But on the floor, beside my chair, were footprints. Bare. Damp. And they led straight to my bed. I wanted to believe it had been a dream. Some fevered nightmare born from exhaustion and stress. But the footprints were real. The indent in my bed was real. The voice. That voice. I didn't sleep the next night. I left every light on. Locked every door. I even salted the windowsills, though I didn't know why. I just heard once that it kept things out. But at 3:12 a.m., the lights flickered. At 3:13 a.m., the air turned heavy, thick with something unseen. And at 3:14 a.m., it spoke. Not through the door. Not from the hall. From right beside me. You look so tired, Alex. The way it said my name, slow, deliberate, familiar, made my skin crawl. My stomach twisted as I realized something. I had never told it my name. I shot up from the couch. My body rigid with terror. My breath came in sharp gasps as my eyes darted around the room. Nothing. Just the dim glow of the lamp. The quiet hum of the fridge. The stillness of the house. But it was here. Watching. Waiting. I grabbed my keys and ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, my hands trembling as I fumbled to start the engine. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to go. The tires screeched as I peeled out of the driveway. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Streetlights blurred past me as I sped down the empty road, my knuckles white against the wheel. Then, the radio crackled. I hadn't turned it on. The static hummed through the speakers. Sharp and erratic. Then, beneath it, a whisper. You can't leave me behind. I slammed on the brakes. My breath hitched, my body frozen as the static morphed into something else. Laughter. Soft. Amused. Right in my ear. I turned. The rearview mirror. A face. Not mine. Grinning. Too many teeth. And then, darkness. The world flickered, gone, then back. Like reality had been unplugged for a second. I was still in the car. The engine was still running. My hand still gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. But something was wrong. The road was empty. The streetlights were gone. And the clock on the dashboard? 3:12 a.m. Hadn't I been driving for minutes? My heart pounded as I checked my phone, but the screen was black, dead. I tapped the power button over and over, but nothing. Then, tap, tap, tap. Fingertips. On the driver's side window. I stopped breathing. Slowly, like moving through a nightmare, I turned my head. Something stood outside the car. Not a person. Not human. Its outline was wrong, its body too thin, its limbs too long. And its face. No, I couldn't call it that. Because where a face should be, there was only darkness. A hole. A void. And yet, somehow, I knew it was grinning. I fumbled with the gear shift, my pulse hammering. My foot stomped the gas. Tires screeching against the pavement as the car lurched forward. The figure didn't move. It didn't have to. Because as I sped down the road, as the darkness swallowed the world around me, I felt it. In the passenger seat. Sitting beside me. Too close. Breathing. I didn't look. I couldn't look. Its voice slithered into my ear, soft, patient, full of something that almost sounded like affection. You can run, Alex. But I will always find you. The wheel jerked. Not by me. By it. The car spun. My body slammed against the door, metal groaning as I lost control. The headlights swept across empty space, spinning, twisting. Then, impact. A crunch of glass. A sickening jolt. And then, silence. Pain. That was the first thing I felt. A deep, bruising ache radiating from my shoulder, my ribs, my skull. My body felt like it had been thrown, and maybe it had. I forced my eyes open. The car was still. The windshield was a shattered web of cracks, my breath fogging the broken glass. The airbag had deployed, its chemical sting thick in my nostrils. The world outside was too dark, not night. But something else. Something unnatural. I tried to move. Every muscle protested. My seatbelt had locked tight across my chest, but I clawed at it, desperate to get out. My fingers fumbled against the latch. It wouldn't budge. Then, click. The seatbelt unfastened on its own. Cold fingers brushed my arm. I recoiled, gasping. Scrambling away as best as I could in the cramped space. But there was nowhere to go. Because I wasn't alone. In the dim glow of the flickering dashboard lights, something sat in the passenger seat. Still. Waiting. Its head tilted in slow, unnatural increments. It wasn't looking at me, it had no eyes, but I could feel it watching. The voice came again, soft as a breath. You crashed, Alex. My pulse hammered. You should have let me in. I reached for the door handle. My fingers wrapped around the metal. But the lock slammed down. Every single one. A deep, rattling breath filled the car. The windows fogged from the inside. The shape in the passenger seat shifted, its grin stretching, too wide, too deep. Too hungry. The radio crackled to life. Through the static, through the rising hum of something wrong, I heard my own voice. Distorted. Repeating. You should have let me in. Then. The world snapped to black. I woke up in my bed. The morning sun streamed through my blinds, golden, safe, wrong. My blankets were neat. My phone sat on the nightstand, fully charged. No broken car. No injuries. Like it had never happened. Like it had been a dream. But when I sat up, my body screamed with real pain. My ribs throbbed. My shoulder burned. And on my nightstand, beside my phone, my car keys. Damp. Cold. And beside them, pressed into the wood, as if traced by a finger. A single word. Mine. I stared at the word carved into my nightstand. My breath coming too fast, too shallow. Mine. I ran my fingers over the grooves. The indentation was deep, jagged, like something had scratched it in with deliberate force. No. Not something. It. I forced myself out of bed, my body screaming in protest. My ribs ached like I really had been in that crash, like I really had slammed against the seatbelt. But how? How could that be possible if I was here, back in my bed, as if nothing had happened? I grabbed my phone. The screen lit up. 7:45 a.m. Everything looked normal. No missed calls. No messages. But the wallpaper was different. I didn't recognize it at first, just a dark, grainy image. I squinted, trying to make it out. It looked like fabric. No, blankets. A bed. My bed. Then I saw it. The indentation on the mattress. The place where something had been lying next to me. I dropped the phone. My stomach lurched, a rising nausea that sent me stumbling to the bathroom. I barely made it to the sink before I heaved. Nothing came up. Just dry, painful gasps. I gripped the edges of the counter, my knuckles white. I forced myself to look up at the mirror. And that's when I saw it. The closet door. It was open. Just a few inches. I never left it open. A sharp creak cut through the silence. My blood ran cold. I wasn't alone. Something moved behind me. A slow, shifting weight, like someone shifting from foot to foot. The kind of sound you don't notice unless the world around you is dead quiet. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't make myself look. Then. The whisper. "You're awake." My reflection blinked. But I didn't. I spun, heart hammering, ready to fight, to run. But the closet was empty. Just darkness. Deep. Waiting. Something shifted inside it, too far back where the light didn't reach. I grabbed the door and slammed it shut. Then, from the other side. A knock. Soft. Patient. And then. The laugh. I stumbled back from the closet, my breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. The knock was soft, deliberate. The laugh that followed was worse, low, knowing. I pressed my hand flat against the door, my pulse hammering beneath my skin. Silence. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. A full minute. Nothing. The air felt thick, heavy in my lungs. I forced myself to step away, my legs shaking, my mind screaming at me to leave this house. Then. Knock. 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 Harder this time. Eager. I ran. Out of my bedroom, down the hall. Nearly tripping over my own feet. I didn't stop until I reached the kitchen, until I was standing under the harsh fluorescent light. Gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. I needed to think. I needed to do something. But before I could, the power cut out. The house plunged into darkness. I froze. The only sound was my own breathing, sharp and uneven. Then. A whisper. Right behind me. "Let's play a game, Alex." I turned so fast I nearly lost my footing. My hands scrambling for anything, a knife, something to fight with, but there was nothing there. Nothing but darkness. And then. The phone rang. The sound split through the silence. Shrill and unnatural. My chest tightened. The landline. I hadn't used it in years. It rang again. Again. I forced my legs to move, crossing the kitchen in slow, hesitant steps. My fingers hovered over the receiver. The air felt wrong. Like something was waiting. The phone rang one last time. And then it answered itself. Click. Silence. Then, the sound of breathing. Slow. Shallow. Then. My own voice. "You should have let me in." I threw the phone across the room. The lights flashed back on, but not the way they should have. Not all at once. One by one. Down the hall. Leading back to my room. Leading back to the closet. The door was open again. This time, all the way. And inside. A shape. Tall. Twisted. Grinning. Waiting. Then. Darkness. Darkness swallowed everything. Not just the absence of light, but something deeper. A smothering blackness that pressed against my skin, filled my lungs. Made me feel like I was sinking into something cold and endless. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. Then. A whisper. Right against my ear. "You're playing now, Alex." The darkness snapped away. I was somewhere else. Not my house. Not anywhere I recognized. The walls stretched too high, dissolving into black nothingness. The air smelled damp, wrong. Like old wood and something sickly sweet. And in front of me. A door. Plain. Wooden. A single word was carved into it, deep and jagged. Rules. A slow, heavy creak echoed behind me. I turned. Another door. Then another. And another. A hallway full of them, stretching too far in both directions, all identical, all waiting. The whisper came again, soft and patient. You have to play, Alex. Those are the rules. My pulse hammered. My hands curled into fists. No, I rasped, my throat raw, my voice barely above a breath. No, I'm not. The air shifted. The floor tilted beneath me. And then, from behind every door in the hallway. Knocking. Soft at first. Then harder. More urgent. Faster. A rhythm that didn't make sense. Like too many hands pounding at once, growing more frantic, more eager. I backed away, my body screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. The whisper slithered against my ear again. Pick one. The knocking stopped. The silence was worse. A single door in front of me swung open, slow, inviting. And beyond it, a dark room. Something breathed inside. Something waiting. I swallowed hard. I didn't want to step forward, but I wasn't in control anymore. My feet moved on their own. As I crossed the threshold, the whisper came one last time, full of something almost like laughter. Try to win. The door slammed shut behind me. And the game began. The darkness swallowed me whole. Thick. Alive. I reached for the door behind me. My fingers scrambling over the wood, but there was no handle. No way out. I wasn't alone. Something was breathing in the dark. Slow. Deep. Waiting. Then. A single light flickered on. Dim, swinging. It barely reached the edges of the room, but it showed just enough. The walls weren't walls at all. They were mirrors. Floor to ceiling, stretching in every direction. Trapping my reflection 1,000 times over. But not all of them moved when I did. Some stood still. Watching. I took a slow, shuddering step forward. My reflections followed, except for one. My chest tightened. One of them wasn't me. It stood near the farthest mirror, just at the edge of the light. Same face. Same clothes. But its head was tilted too far, its grin too wide. It didn't blink. Didn't breathe. And then, in a single, jarring movement, it stepped forward. The light flickered. A whisper slithered through the room, curling against my skin. 3 rules, Alex. I swallowed hard. My mouth was too dry. My pulse hammered against my ribs like a trapped animal. 1. Don't break the mirrors. I turned, eyes darting between reflections. The wrong one had moved again. Closer. 2. Don't look away. I stiffened. The wrong reflection was grinning wider now. Its head twitched in a slow, unnatural jerk. Like something struggling to mimic human movement. I squeezed my fists, trying to keep my breathing steady. 3. The whisper came from right behind me. Don't let it reach you. The light went out. The mirrors shattered. And the thing that looked like me laughed. The mirrors exploded around me. Glass rained down in sharp, glittering shards, cutting into my skin, my arms. My face. I threw my hands up, but it was everywhere, falling, breaking, screaming. And beneath the sound of shattering glass. Laughter. Not mine. Not human. Then, silence. I opened my eyes. The mirrors were gone. The room was different now, smaller, wrong. The air thick with something I couldn't name. And standing in front of me. The thing that looked like me. Only now. It wasn't just an off reflection. It was real. It stood there, grinning, its head still tilted at that horrible, broken angle. Its eyes weren't eyes at all, just black, hollow pits. Swallowing the light. My breath hitched. I stepped back. It stepped forward. I felt it move. Not like a reflection. Like a twin. Like something connected to me in a way I couldn't understand. I pressed my back against the wall, my hands shaking. What do you want? My voice barely came out. The thing's grin stretched. It lifted its hand, my hand. Raised it to its own face. Dragged long, two sharp fingers across its cheek. Then, it spoke. I want your turn to be over. The word slithered from its mouth, wrong, familiar, mine but not mine. Then, it lunged. I ran. There was nowhere to go, no doors, no way out, but I ran anyway, heart pounding, legs burning. My own footsteps echoed too loud. No. Not mine. Ours. It was running with me. Laughing. The walls stretched and twisted, folding into themselves, turning the room into something impossible, something endless. And then, I tripped. Glass bit into my hands as I hit the ground hard. My ribs screaming in pain. I turned, scrambling to push myself up. Too late. It was above me now. Grinning. And when it spoke this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was my own voice. Game over, Alex. Then, blackness. I woke up gasping. Air burned my lungs, my body cold with sweat. My hands scrambled against solid ground, not glass, not the impossible shifting walls of that room. Carpet. I was in my bedroom. The morning light filtered through my blinds, soft and golden. The air was still. I sat up too fast, my ribs screaming in protest. Pain flared deep in my chest, real pain. Not a dream. Not a hallucination. I looked down at my hands. Tiny cuts lined my palms. Little shards of glass embedded in the skin. I was there. It happened. I swallowed hard. My pulse hammering against my skull. I had to move. Had to get up, get out, get somewhere safe. Then. A whisper. Right next to me. Are you sure you're you? My stomach dropped. I turned slowly toward the mirror across the room. I wasn't alone. I sat on the bed. But so did something else. A second me. Not a reflection. A copy. Same face. Same clothes. Same cuts on its hands. But its head was tilted too far, its mouth stretched into something that wasn't quite a smile. I stopped breathing. It blinked. Once. Too slow. Then, it stood up. At the exact same time I did. Moving with me. Mirroring me too perfectly. I lifted my hand. It lifted its hand. I stepped forward. It did too. But then. It kept going. One more step. Ahead of me. My pulse stalled. No. No, no. No. The thing smiled wider. And then, it spoke. In my voice. Your turn is over, Alex. The mirror cracked. The world flipped inside out. And the last thing I saw before the darkness took me again was my own body walking away and leaving me behind. I was trapped. Not in my house. Not in my room. Not anywhere real. The world had shifted, peeled away like old wallpaper, revealing something wrong underneath. The walls were shadows, not solid, not moving, but shifting in ways that made my head ache. The air was thick, damp, humming with something alive. And in front of me, the mirror. The one I had been looking at just seconds ago. The one I had seen myself in. Except now, the glass wasn't cracked anymore. And my reflection wasn't mine. I watched in horror as my copy, the thing that had stepped out of the mirror, stood in my bedroom. It stretched, rolled its shoulders, tested its hands, flexing the fingers, turning them over, as if admiring its new body. My body. It smiled. Then, it looked directly at me. I stumbled backward. My breath came fast and sharp. My chest tightening. It could see me. It knew I was watching. And then, it did something that made my blood turn to ice. It waved. Casual. Playful. Like we were old friends. Then, it turned away. And walked out of my room. Leaving me behind. I pounded on the mirror. No. Stop. My fist slammed against the glass, but there was no sound. No impact. It was like trying to punch water. I was on the wrong side now. My chest heaved, panic clawing at my ribs. This wasn't happening. This wasn't real. Then, a whisper. Not from the mirror. From behind me. You never should have played. Alex. I turned, slowly, heart hammering. The shadows rippled. And from their depths, something moved. Tall. Grinning. Something that had been waiting for me to lose. Something that had won. And as it stepped forward, I realized. I wasn't going to wake up this time. The shadows breathed. Not air, not wind, but something thick and wrong. A movement in the dark that pushed against my skin like invisible hands. I couldn't see it. But I knew it was close. The thing that had whispered to me, the thing that had been waiting in this place. Waiting for me. I stepped back. My breath hitched. The air was thick, humming, pressing against my ears like a distant radio frequency, something I wasn't meant to hear. And then, they started whispering. Not just one voice. Dozens. Hundreds. Low, crawling voices slithering over each other, overlapping, filling the space, filling me. I clamped my hands over my ears. But it didn't help. Let us out. He took your place. You were too slow, Alex. Too slow. Too slow. I stumbled forward. My hands shook. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to move. Then, the whispers shifted. They weren't just voices anymore. They were figures. Stepping from the blackness. Shapes. People. Some barely there, flickering like candlelight, their faces half-formed. Twisted, stretched into something not quite human. Others were whole, their eyes hollow, their mouths slightly open, like they had been frozen mid-scream. They surrounded me. They were watching me. I pressed my back against the mirror, my chest rising and falling too fast. No, I gasped. No, no, no. A hand shot from the dark. Grabbed my wrist. I screamed. The thing that held me was cold. Its grip tight, skin like old paper stretched too thin. Its face was inches from mine, a person or something that used to be one. Its mouth open. No teeth. No tongue. Just a dark, empty hole. And then, it spoke. You were not the first to lose. I yanked away, stumbling back. And that's when I saw it. The mirror. It wasn't reflecting the room anymore. It was reflecting them. All the people who had lost. All the ones who had been trapped before me. All staring back. And in the center, walking through my house, living my life, was me. The thing that had taken my place. It sat at my kitchen table, ate my food, smiled at my phone screen. It was comfortable now. Settled. It wasn't just pretending to be me anymore. It was me. And I was just another shadow in the dark. Then, the mirror cracked. And the whispers started screaming. The mirror shattered. Not like glass. Not like something breaking. Like something peeling away. The world behind it, my world, ripped apart in jagged, splintering pieces, revealing nothing but blackness. And the screaming. A chorus of voices, rising all at once. Hundreds. Thousands. All the people who had been here before me. All the ones who had lost. I stumbled back. My breath came fast and sharp, my heart hammering against my ribs. The figures surrounded me now, closing in. Their eyes hollow, their mouths still open in silent horror. But the worst part? They weren't looking at me. They were looking past me. At the thing that had been waiting. The real winner of the game. The shadows moved. And from their depths, it stepped forward. Tall. Twisted. Grinning. Its body was wrong, shifting in ways that didn't make sense. Like it didn't fully understand what shape it was supposed to be. But its face was mine. It had my features, but they weren't right. The skin was stretched too tight, the eyes too wide. The mouth too full of teeth that weren't supposed to be there. I couldn't move. I couldn't move. It smiled. Then, it spoke. You lost, Alex. I tried to step back, but the shadows held me. Clawing at my skin, pulling me deeper, deeper. And then, I saw it. The other mirror. Not the one I had come through. A different one. A way out. The thing that wore my face followed my gaze. And for the first time, its smile faded. It knew. It knew I had seen it. And it lunged. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't stop. I tore free from the shadows, from the grasping hands. From the screaming whispers. And I threw myself toward the mirror. The second I hit the glass, the world snapped. And everything changed. I woke up on my bedroom floor. Gasping. Shaking. Alive. I sat up fast, my hands scrambling over solid ground. Carpet. Wood. Real. The morning light filtered through my blinds, soft and golden. My room was quiet. I was back. I forced myself to my feet. My whole body trembling. I turned to the mirror. It was normal. Whole. But something wasn't right. I stepped closer, my breath uneven. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed, pale. I raised my hand. It did the same. I touched the glass. It was solid. Real. I let out a breath, shaky, ragged. It was over. I was out. Then. My reflection smiled. And I didn't. I stopped breathing. The thing in the mirror tilted its head. Its grin stretched wider, too wide. And then, in my own voice, it whispered. Your turn is over, Alex. The mirror shattered. And the lights went out.